Okay, very good. Good evening, everybody. Calling the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Yesterday, or last meeting, excuse me, we had a few bullet points. One was to make sure that the tax information was up on the website, which it is. That gives you the cost information per thousand for households in Merrimack. So you go again on the SAU website, and it's information's right on the main page. Second item was to bring up both the drawings and review them of the 11,000 square foot versus the 8,700 square foot, 8,300? 8,700 square foot option. So we have Matt drive in the PowerPoint and gonna walk us through it real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. This was the first one we're looking up with the CO. Oh, I'm sorry. The voice from beyond there. Yeah, this was the original plan. It was 11,000 square feet, had around a 1,400 square foot conference room. It included all the positions that we currently need and basically would take us into the future. Kind of a lot of our schools, in fact, most of our schools that we have built also have like 5 to 6 additions over the years. This building here with this amount of square footage and the number of offices and the space, I think it kind of feels to me like it'll last you for decades without having to put any additions on. So you're not going to get into that kind of dilemma of putting addition on or tying in HVAC from new to old, tying in fire alarm systems.
One question about that.
Yeah.
It looks like pretty much all the rooms are spoken for in terms of butts and seats, except for maybe
there's one that says office.
office.
There's the opportunity to move some of those people into schools if we needed to, like the data collection person right next to the one that does say office, like the out-of-district coordinator that could be at a school. So it gives us the options to either have them here with us, which is optimal, or to place them out. There's a larger workroom, there's a larger mini conference room there, and then there's the big conference room, which is around 1,400 square feet. On the other one, you could see there's less people in there. It's kind of, what would take care of us at this point in time without any planned additions in the future. So it's a good plan. They're both good plans. The conference room is smaller. The workroom is smaller. There are less offices in there, but it fits our needs, I think, for the time being. It all depends which way the committee would like to go. Obviously, there's a cost differential in these that has to be taken into account. And, do you want to look at it for what is good now or what is going to be, good for a couple of decades that you don't have to touch or bother with? So, Bill, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. It's just a brief overview. I'll flip back to the larger one.
The second plan, the reduced plan, the 8,700 square feet would sort of be the minimum requirement. I mean, in that plan, we would not have the director of technology, wouldn't have the out-of-district placement person. We would not have data collection person. Now, could the director of technology reside at the high school where he is now? Yes. But I wouldn't see us going any lower in terms of square footage and office spaces. I mean, there is obviously some minimum level of scale and that needs to be in existence. I mean, we have so many confidential conversations that cubbies, 8 by 8 areas are not realistic in our type of function. So, You know, the most important thing really is that we have a conference room that can accommodate our leadership team, that can allow other town departments to utilize it. From my experience in a building like this, of this size, that conference room is going to be busy all the time, whether it's with professional training for the school department, the fire department in my former district, the police department, water department, highway department used to use the conference room for their own training or various purposes. So, is that the ideal, the 11,000 square foot? Yes, but could we exist with the 87? Yes, we could.
So the thing is, we're existing now in 2 single-family homes. I mean, but the existence really isn't optimal. In fact, you know, the fire inspection report said that I have to, eventually, somebody has to file a change of use request permit. Haven't done that yet. So we're still in office space that really doesn't meet any fire code whatsoever, and the ADA code is definitely not there. So we can keep going the way we're going, or we could do something of one of these 2 plans or something entirely different. It's up to the committee what the pleasure that they want to recommend to the school board to see how that would go. So
You make a quick clarification. You made a comment that we're doing all this out of the 2 buildings. I don't think we're doing all this.
oh no, we're not.
Yeah.
No, absolutely
I just
not.
want to make sure that, because, well, I want to make sure everyone hears
Yeah.
that.
No,
That's
the
not-
amount of
that's
people
not
in the
accurate.
2 buildings
Yeah.
does not equal this. I mean,
It's 4 fewer, right? There's 4 people that aren't.
in the smaller
No.
version, I guess you could call it that.
It's
Yeah.
4 people.
Yeah.
One clarifying question as well. You talked a bit about like, you know, building a conference room that can be used by like the town and the fire department
Yep.
and all of that. I guess I'm a little kind of like confused, unclear on that point, like how much that is the driving force behind wanting to have that conference room. Like I know, for example, I did call and talk to the folks that, you know, run the John O'Leary Center right next to the library. It's town-owned, and they can rent it out to us to have like meetings as the school department. Surely, since the town owns it, they can also use that space, which is larger than that, for their own meetings. And so I was just confused, if they have that meeting space available, like, why would we build a separate one for them to use?
I think Lori had a comment on that last time. Did you, Lori?
Yeah, I had a couple comments. So, first of all, like when we rent space and now we're having people drive, we do pay people for mileage. So every time you're going to have someone drive from the high school instead of being right there over there. But also the John O'Leary, it's used for senior citizens. It has, you're not going to be able to say we're going to bring in a speaker and necessarily have that space. I think if we're running a school district efficiently, what I talked about last time was we have an obligation for professional development for all of our staff, for teachers, for everyone, to have a meeting space that's in the district that can meet the needs. I think it's really critical. And as a school board member, it's our job to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the school district, at least giving the voters an opportunity to recognize what our needs are and then make that decision.
Understood, but it is available for use on the evenings and weekends. They do use it during the day for different things. It's directly across the street from the school. I mean, it's not really much trouble. And I was pointing it out, though, that, I mean, the town owns it. And so when I hear, you know, let's build a large conference room so the town can use it, and they have one right across the street.
It's not
I
a
was-
conference
where-
room. Have you ever been to the
where are we
John
talking
O'Leary?
I've been in it several
So it's not
times.
it's not a conference room.
Across- where is
It's a center.
It's a
But,
center.
you know, when you look at like the town facilities, like for example, I go back to the DPW, they have a conference room because they need a conference room for the work that they do. So we didn't tell the DPW doubles, oh, like, let's try to rent the John O'Leary. We said, well, you need a conference room. We understand that. We're gonna respect it.
I'm understanding. So the people that work in these 2 buildings over here are gonna say, guys, let's meet up, let's huddle up real quick. They all get in their cars and drive down to that
It's
and
right
then
next to the library. They
have
could
a
walk
meeting?
there from here, like in 2 minutes.
2 minutes to walk here to the end.
It's
So
right next to the library.
yeah.
It's like directly across the street.
No, and I'm talking about from the superintendent's building now. The
Sure,
two
yeah.
small houses that we're talking about. You want them to walk
Well, town folks. In any case,
a
there's
mile to go
and-
to
and-
a meeting.
And folks have just mentioned that we pay people today to like drive to other locations and do their training. It's a
Yeah.
much shorter putt, and it's
Understood. So
town-owned.
let me ask you: when we talk about the differences between these two buildings,
Yep.
is the conference room what's holding you up? What
Well, I'm trying to understand what the differences are, and when I heard
four offices, a conference room, and a little bit of size on some of the areas.
and when I heard about the intended use for the conference room, it raised a question for me. There is space available here. You know, we could probably, for the cost of building that conference room, could probably rent, you know, a couple hundred years worth of that space right across the street.
In an
term-
O'Leary Senior Center. Yeah.
Yes, I've been in there plenty of times for meetings. It's perfectly good place to have a meeting and do trainings.
So
I'm just going to say to you, look, from many years of being a superintendent of schools, that space is the most important space
I'm with
in the
you.
entire building. Anthony, we're required to provide restraint training for staff members. Sometimes that's 30 staff members at a time. We run courses. We would run courses out of the conference room. My mention of other town departments was very secondary in nature. I mean, we would always make it available, but we would keep that room going constantly. And it's much easier when all our resources are there, when we're all focused on a particular professional development, and we're not running back and forth. That's the issue right now, is we're running all over town, trying to find any available space we can. And that space, and I understand, and I've seen that space because the Rotary Club has a wonderful top 10 scholars dinner every year at the end of the school year. But it's not particularly set up for a lot of the functions that we would be using that conference room for. So, I would be very glad to talk more in depth with you based on all the years that I've been a superintendent and the importance of that space. That's, I would ask you, and I don't mean this in a facetious manner. I assume wherever you work probably has a conference room. And probably used a lot of the time. And so we're no different than
Sure.
any other type of
But I
business
also would
entity.
point out that for all the decades that you've been here, or some of us have been here, right? Like for over 4 decades, some of the people here, it hasn't existed, and we've got managed, right? And so there's like kind of a sudden like, oh, but now it's hard required today.
Anthony, I think you should run for school board, because I think that's what the difficulty is right now. What you're trying to do is stuff that, it is on, I'm sorry, I'm not close enough apparently. What you're trying to do is stuff that the school board should be dealing with. I said it at our last meeting. If the town doesn't want it, if they do want it, it's up to the town. The school district's coming forward with the ideas of what they need to run their operation.
Absolutely.
And so,
Yeah, and
you're
here's,
hang on a second, Anthony.
But that's,
Point of-
that's where I am. I think you're just on the
Yeah.
wrong committee. I think that the school board is probably where you belong to do what you're desiring to do tonight.
well, I think what I'm after, one of the things that the school board asked this committee to do is look at, have the different potential options on the table. And when I think to myself, how many times has this, gone up for a vote in various forms? Last year, this
25
precisely
years.
was voted down, right?
Yep.
And so, like, what can we do to get to like a $2 million solution, a $3 million solution? So that's why I'm like,
We've been trying to
help
do
us
that for 25 years.
identify those spaces. And when I
Yeah.
say, okay, like, we've got gyms, we've got CAFs, we've got like potentially options, like, is this a place where some of that cost savings could occur? So we could finally get the community on board with a number and a building. Like, that's kind of what I'm going for.
I'm not seeing all these amenities that you're referring to, but thank you for clarifying, Finley. And secondly, we're a committee that is, again, the reason I'm here is because I want to build the building, and I want to do it in a fashion that answers everybody's questions in Merrimack. Hopefully they listen and they watch this, and then they can make an educated vote based on real information. So everybody is heard. You know, we've heard your opinion on the conference room. I think we all have an opinion on the conference room. If there aren't, you know, we want to discuss anything about the actual building that we put forth. So I think as a committee tonight, we need to decide which direction we want to push for, and then now that we have, it was either you or your father, Paul. I was going to say Paul or Frank. Paul here. We want to find out after we decide which building that we want to recommend. Are there any tweaks that we need to make to be able to bring down the number? Because I think, let's say we go with the 6.9. We've talked about this over the years. It's been over the years. You know, this is a quick budget. So we talked about a design build option. We talked about going out to bid to multiple contractors as more of a, you hire an architect, you design it, and then you put it out for a hard bid. We talked about a construction manager. Not like we even need to get into any of that, but I think that with Paul here, as a committee, I think we need to make a decision, talk about some technical stuff. If we have any questions, let Paul go on his way, make our commitment, make our recommendation, and then work toward getting it done. Any questions? Yeah.
One thing that came up during the discussion last year was the use of possible cubicles, and I don't know if you took the time to look into that as a possibility. Are there things that can be opened up so you don't have to have partitions? Because I thought that was, it might not work, but if it was something where that could happen, it might be, you know, might be some.
One of the issues, certainly with cubicles, is a lot of people in the office have very confidential conversations.
No, I understand. That's why I didn't
Yeah.
know if you had looked into it and saw positions
Yeah.
where that could happen or not. I know there's a lot of,
Yeah, because last year, what we were hoping for is to be able to close off the conference room in a way that if the Boy Scouts wanted to use it,
Yes.
it would be
Yeah.
a space that the community could use. Because really and truly, there are limited spaces. Like, I mean, people think there's a lot of spaces. There are limited spaces. And I know for the Nashua School District, they rent out space, you know, like, so, you know, like their theaters, like in the north and south, they're rented all the time to dance companies all the time. It generates money for the school district because they rent out spaces that people don't have. I know we're saying for Boy Scouts community service things, but if someone had something and they needed a space, we would be able to do that.
So we've talked about I think all the spaces a lot of times. At this point, can we? I don't know how to do this, Gage. You'll have to help me here. But can we do a question, a vote, or you know where people stand as to which direction they're feeling at this point? How does that?
Well, I mean, we can have a conversation about where we stand, but if you wanna have a vote, that's gonna be a
Well,
decision.
Yeah,
Right, but if we're just having a conversation, which one do you like, we could just talk about, which do you prefer, what do you prefer?
correct, guys.
Yeah,
Let's
but I
talk
mean-
about it here. I feel like we need to pick one and then head in that direction. Go ahead.
see, that's for me the dilemma. I'd rather come up with a couple of proposals, adjust as necessary as possible, give pricing without the conference, make the presentation to the school board. They make the decision. I see the conference room as an important component of the thing if you're gonna build it. But that way they have options on the table and they can, you know, run with it.
So
Do you wanna give them one
Yeah.
option?
I do.
It's not
Yeah.
really options.
It's not an option because we're a committee that works hard to come up with a recommendation. A committee that comes up with a recommendation with multiple recommendations isn't doing their job.
That's not true.
We've vetted out with the school board what space they need, who they need to be where. We've vetted out the safety aspect of not being at cubicles. We've vetted out Rite Aid. We've vetted out the two buildings that are there. We went down the road of retrofitting those with elevators and bells and whistles and fire alarm systems. At this point, we've done a lot of work on this. And Anthony, I know it's not where you want it to be. I get that. But that's why it's a committee, and we have a bunch of us. So that's why I want to take a vote. Figure out what temperature everybody's at. If you got a bunch of people that are with you, then let's keep talking about it. But
Well,
otherwise, let's move forward.
I agree with Finley. I mean, I think.
And that's great. That's why it's a vote.
But very, very often, committees and in every profession, like trade studies occur, and you do end up with multiple options that you present to the decision makers on the table.
Sure.
And if we had the packet all in their building, and here's the pros and cons, and then the medium building, and here's the pros and cons, and like tiny, and here's the pros and cons, and they have different price points, different trade-offs, different likelihoods of getting voted in by the voters, that's a perfectly legitimate output from this committee.
I think Caitlin was, unless you want to jump in real quick, Bill, with something.
No, my only comment was, it's like a basic election. The more alternatives you have, the more difficult it is to get a majority on something. Because the vote is split.
Exactly.
So many people are conflicted in terms of, okay, which one am I gonna select? So you have 6 different options. I don't think you're gonna get the votes to have any option.
If I could,
Caitlin?
Yeah, wasn't there like an ad hoc committee thing that, it wasn't there
Yes.
some sort of,
Right.
is that like a thing that we wanted, wouldn't giving them the options and then them being
No.
able to help us narrow it, so then we can say, yes, we are a group of people, and then we had another group of people who were able to add their input to be able to help us make that final decision, and then when it comes to what we're putting on the ballot, it would be one or the other, but it would be based off of at least their other people's input from a bit more around.
So
Yeah.
Finley and
I'm
I,
with
we don't always agree. So I disagree with him on this point strongly, because I agree with Shane, like, our obligation is to put together the best proposal that we can and and based on the needs of what the school board, the reason I'm here is I'm supposed to be the voice of the school board. So every time I leave this meeting and I go back to the school board, I have a conversation with the school board, and then I hear the school board's vision for us. And so what they really want us to do is to start moving this forward. We don't have time.
Agreed.
Like, we are in October. We don't have time. If we spend all of our time and we have mixed messages and we don't come out with a clear vision, this is gonna fail again. So I agree with Shane. We need to have a clear vision. We need to look at what are the needs of the school district, not just what is the needs of yesterday or today, or because we did not do this for many, many years, remember? And if we go back in the history, we only had 2 times we put this before the voters, and most things in the town of Merrimack, most things take 2 times.
There was one
There's a
time-
history
sorry.
for the voters of Merrimack. They have to warm up to it. So you put it out once, and then they warm up because they have to learn about it, and then they vote for it. Many of us have been on the committee. We wanted to go back and put it back out there right away the last time. But at the time, the superintendent pulled it off. And so we never saw it again. This committee sat in a stalemate for years wanting to get this work done. So now we're here, so we need to make decisions and we need to move forward.
There was one time where we put a capital reserve account for this, and that was voted down because the people wanted to see the building on the ballot. So that was put forward. It was $1.5 million. It was a steel building. It was modular construction. That failed. Then we didn't do anything for probably another 10, 15 years, and we did it last year, and that failed. So
and that,
So,
that was all
one
on
thing-
presentation, by the way, it was just poorly done that night, coming up with an amendment right out of the gate, it just didn't make sense.
Right.
And so that is what destroyed it. It annoyed people for a multitude of different reasons, but
Caitlin had brought up the ad hoc committee. We did the ad hoc committee meeting last year. We asked them a bunch of questions. It didn't seem like they were as engaged as I guess I was hoping. I didn't know. We didn't have the contrary people. We had the people that were with us. We had the one guy that was.
So I will say, like, Chris Christensen was on the ad hoc committee. I thought he did a really good job on the forum. I thought he really went out batting hard for Merrimack. What we asked for is at the school board level for people to volunteer. And if you remember, we got a great mixture of people, but we were happy about that because we got the the strong pros and we got the cons. We heard it all together, and we felt that was going to help us as a board level to find out where people really thought. Because of the lack of time and direction, I think the ad hoc committee didn't know really what their jobs were, because we were hoping the
working out
ad
of a
hoc
vacuum.
committee would do was more like go to Shaw's, set up a table outside of Shaw's and have this and engage with the community about what it looks like. Those directions, it just kind of fell flat a little bit. We just ran out of time. That's why this time, like, I just don't want to run out of time. We really need to.
But we're not rushing, and I want to be clear about that, because we've done this last year. Yeah, go ahead, Gage. I know you had something to say.
Go
You
ahead.
turned it on. I got excited there. The so I don't want it to be we're not working out of a vacuum here. We've been working on this for many years. We know what the design is. We've gone down the path. In my opinion, and I haven't given it yet, is I think we get to a point where I think we use the big design. Which I'm calling it the big design, but it's not. It's the essential design, and we get the 6.9 down to a much more reasonable number. We VE it, however that needs to be done, and this is a budget. Keep in mind, so I'm guessing there's a little bit of fluff in there anyway, and then we put it out as our recommendation. That's my opinion. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Paul, in your mind's eye, have you kind of decided where this would go on this? Is it the same?
Yeah.
Would it be just centered and smaller, or would we be starting the conference room in the same location?
Seems like
It would be roughly the same location. It's only a little shorter.
Right.
It's like one row of offices shorter.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, as Matt brought up, we love putting additions on things.
Yeah.
So,
For
Yeah.
millions
yeah.
of
So,
dollars.
well, yeah. Exactly.
would
Well, no,
hopefully not
exactly.
be
and that's what we don't want to do. In my opinion.
I'm not saying I want to do that either. I'm just saying, but we love doing that. I'm just saying, because if the building is, centered in that same spot, then we don't really lend
Right.
ourselves to having an addition. If we start the conference room at the same spot, then that whole edge is the 20 or so feet that's shorter is still space for.
And
addition.
total cost to Merrimack voters and taxpayers, an addition costs more than
Yes,
just doing it right the
absolutely.
first time.
Yep.
Unless it's a 30-year bond at 4% interest, because a 30-year bond at 4% interest, you can add $700,000 to the million in the total cost of
I'm just
that.
saying, if you build a building with total space now,
Yeah.
costs X. If you build it shorter and then build it up to that total space, it costs more next time. It costs X plus.
Yeah, I mean, the
to do
cost,
the addition.
the cost of this building when we first came up with this plan was far less than it is now. But that's, inflation, COVID, you name it, it's
We're-
quite different now.
Yeah. All right, so can we take a vote? Is that a thing? I'd like to vote whether we
So-
move forward with one design or we do two designs.
Is it okay if we consider actually talking about how we might be able to move the different cost numbers and for the different versions before we take a vote? Or we have to decide before we actually
What do you wanna talk about?
investigate? So you just had talked about how, with the big design, we could probably get that number quite a lot, because there's probably a bunch of fluff in it. Can we do that with all of them, see where we
I don't know
land
that I
and
said
then
a
vote
bunch
after
of
that?
fluff. It's gonna be, call that 6 million and call the other one 5.
Sure.
Could-
I mean, these are your words.
Yeah, I said some fluff. What do you need?
Could we address, I'd like Paul
Yeah.
to address the
Love it.
fluff.
Love it.
Okay, so go ahead.
There's no fluff, first of all. It's a question of how safe you want to be that you can build this for the budget.
Yeah.
If we cut it to the exact dollar that it might come in at, and for whatever reason costs come in higher, then you're in big trouble. If you put this out to bid and it comes in $500,000 over budget, and you've already cut it down to the bottom quality that you want, what do you do then? So any estimator that you talk to, any construction manager, any estimator, will put a factor in for uncertainty in the market, mostly in inflation over the next year between now and when you do this. So it's not that there's fluff, it's just a safety factor. Like,
I shouldn't have used that term.
most school
I'm-
districts don't want to risk bidding it and not being able to build the building. So most school districts build in, a little bit so that you have a margin of error with the bidding and the market over the next year and a half. And then if it happens to come in optimally, that's great, you'll save money. But it's just a safety factor in that you'll actually be able to build it. If you cut this to the exact, bottom dollar of what it might come in at when you bid it, and it doesn't for whatever reason, like the last 5 years have been a great example, things have not come in where people would expect them to. Then you put it out to bid, you have to start construction, and you have to cut $500,000 out of a project. That's not a very big project. What do you do then? Anything you cut then, you're gonna lose, you're gonna get 50 cents on the dollar back from any contractor you're talking to at that point. So then do you redesign it and put it out to bid again? That takes another 6 months. Then you're bidding it in the summer or fall, which is the wrong time to bid it, so you're paying a big premium for that. So there's all kinds of things that can go wrong if you don't have money in the budget. The less expensive project, I think that's where it's at. It's cut down to the absolute minimum cost. If everything goes right, you could maybe build it for that, but there's a lot of chances that you might not be able to build it for that. So what happened is we brought this project in last year, and it was 6.9 million. A few contractors estimated that, and then we were told you got to build something for 4.8 or whatever it was. And they said, "Can you build something for that?" We're like, "Well, we can do a smaller plan. You can hope it works, and you can build it for that. But there's a lot more risk that it won't work out in terms of the budget when it comes time to actually build it." So it's not that it's fluff. It's that these two plans, the prices that you have for these, are not really apples to apples. One is building a good quality project, the more expensive one. Good quality mechanical systems that will last 20 years and will do what you want and won't, less chance of failing early. The other project has bare bones mechanical system that won't have the same controls, won't have the same, energy efficiency perhaps, probably not the same warranties, because it's a lot cheaper. I mean, it had to be cheaper. So when you look at these two projects, you should be aware of that, the costs that you have. It's not a matter of fluff, it's a matter of safety in terms of the process of being able to build it, and also the quality of what you're getting. So everything from finishes to insulation in the building to mechanical systems to all kinds of other things that you don't really notice. Those have all been cut down to the most basic quality in the cheaper building. So if it were me, I wouldn't want to do that, but that's what you told us to do that. You gave us a number and said back into this number. So I would say the reality is if you're comparing apples to apples, these buildings are probably about $1 million difference in value, given the same quality of each building and the same safety factors in terms of bidding it and building it, as opposed to the $2 million that you think it is. It's probably more like $1 million if you compare apples to apples with equal everything.
Well, if you square foot the 6.9 and put it over the other one, it's 5.4.
Right.
So that's why I came up. And the reason I shouldn't have used the term fluff. The reason I said that there was a difference is because on the original estimates, we got two estimates. One of them was at 6 million, the other was at 6.9. And they both had a contingency. Yours had 350 grand, the other guys had, I think 175 by memory, but I don't see it here. So that's why I thought that there was a little bit of maybe some fluctuation there with the larger building. At the end of the day, I was just trying to get the space that was needed for a little bit more affordable. Yeah.
So I was going to say, so to move this forward, someone would make a motion. So someone would make a motion to accept whatever, someone would second that motion, and then there would be discussion, and then there would be a vote. So someone needs to make a motion.
So I could wait for your motion if you'd like, but just to kind of maybe set it up, just to set up a little differently.
Am I allowed to make a motion?
If we don't, you could. If we're going forward with this, what is our next step then? What is our next step?
After this?
Yeah. If we come up with the building that we want, if that's what we're gonna go with, what's our next step as a committee?
Well, then I thought that's when I thought we'd head back to Paul
Right.
and team and put them on the hunt and say, guys, we gotta, whatever direction we go with,
Right.
we need real costs, updated estimate, because this was a year ago, or not a year ago, 8 months ago. And then we make our recommendation. I mean, we're there. We've talked about this a lot.
Right.
Right. And then what's this job of this committee?
Yeah, I mean.
We just recommend. We don't have any, all we can do is recommend and help.
Well, of course, we would like.
We're just
we would
helping the old
like
lady across the
support
street, you know what I mean?
also. school board would like support also after the recommendation.
That's what I mean, and help. That's what, by
Right.
help. Yeah, no,
Right.
we'll,
Not
I'll be
just-
out there talking about it. So I guess I can do it. Like, I don't, you know,
You are.
I make a motion that, we move forward with the larger of the two designs and work toward reducing the cost as much as possible and make that recommendation to the school board. Any discussion?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, discuss.
You'd mentioned that last year, I think there was direction from someone to explore 4.8. It sounds like you were given a very specific target. Who gave you that direction, and what was the idea behind that last year?
It was our predecessor, who, my predecessor in this role, who thought it was a good idea. That's no other reason. There's no good reason. It wasn't valid. It wasn't supposed to happen. It just was one guy that wanted to get it done, and I don't blame him. He had been doing it for so long. I'm not saying anything bad about him. He was just frustrated with it, and he made a decision that he thought was right based on feedback. It was a mistake.
So, sorry, I'm confused. So you're
Based
saying
on
that
feedback from the voters, the tax
Okay.
increase, the cost increase, everybody was grumpy about it. And
Okay.
he thought it might be a good idea to lower it at the last minute. I'm only talking quick because I actually
Sure.
started the whole meeting with this.
And we think
And
that-
that was why.
And we think it's a good idea, because it is true, taxes have gone up, and they will continue to.
Taxes did go up due to the
We think it's a good-
commercial properties being devalued, yes.
And you think it's a good idea for us to shoot right back at that big number?
I think it's a good idea for us to look forward for the town and make a decision that's educated and that we've been working for 25 years, and that the increase, the Merrimack is the largest increase in population in the area. I think we need to prepare for that. And I think we need to treat our teachers well, and the incoming teachers need a good place to work and come in and be introduced and fingerprinted. And I think the people that work here need a conference room that they can discuss things with and work better for the education of our kids. Yeah. Any other discussion?
Well, I'm all in favor of not doing a half-ass job. It's happened in town too many times. Central Fire Station, I brought it up, I think, a meeting or two ago. Central Fire Station's crazy. The library looks terrible. On a beautiful old building, they put a blob on the end. Town Hall, the only reason this has white siding is because the redwood siding diagonal plank that they put on delaminated. Otherwise, it would have been a hideous building as well. Not that it's much better, but it's not a hideous redwood siding building. So, if it passes or fails, that is what it is. It's up to the voters in the end. But I don't want to do a half-baked job, and so, I'll work with it on that end. I'll agree with the motion, but
Any other discussion? Time to vote. Do we need a roll call or just raise our hands?
You say all those in favor.
All those in favor?
I was just slow to be
Do you need a question?
still talking.
Oh, yeah, go
Still-
ahead.
Still,
Discuss.
sorry, yes. No, so I was, I can see Anthony's point of that if we just put a same thing forward, we kind of already got the feedback from the town that it didn't pass, right? Like, we don't want to just get that same feedback again. So I think that was kind of where he was going with the having, or I don't know, I can't actually speak for you, but at least that was my thought in when I was saying with the having the conference room or not having it. Well, if that would have been a reason for people to decide that they wanted to vote for it, kind of thing, because I think that just gives more perspective, or not perspective, but more other people's input that is not just the people that have been working closely with it, because we didn't ask them to vote and then give us their feedback in that vote. We just said one or the other, so that was why I thought that if we had an ad hoc. But also, do we have the notes from the ad hoc committee from the year before?
Yeah.
Can I find that somewhere?
Yeah, that's the question and answer that we see on the website.
Oh,
which
that
Matt
one. Then I
can-
totally have that. Yep,
can
no, I
drive
have it right
over.
here.
And I will say, so I got a lot of questions that we got was from the what's that, deliberative session, which is where they did give us feedback. And the feedback was, guys, you changed this at the last second. You know,
It
I don't
was a
have
terrible idea.
any faith that you know what you're doing.
It-
So
it-
I don't necessarily think the Merrimack historically, Laurie, has always, you know, gone with recommendations that have been properly vetted out and discussed. It doesn't pass the first time, but the second time, because people are aware of it, they learn about it and everything else. So I'm with you, and I was, you know, the cost difference between 6 million and 5 million, it's I'm not going to say it's negligible, but for a school district as large as ours, for the amount of time we're financing this, it's a very small amount of money, and especially to each taxpayer, it's you know, in some cases it's $20 or $30 we're talking about here.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. So
No.
I just want to say again, when you talk about the amount of time that we're financing this, so I'm not sure. I'll repeat. So a 4% bond for 30 years adds 70%. So your $6.9 million for 30 years at 4% interest equals an $11.75 million project. So if you try to make it appear as though it costs less by having a longer term bond, the actual cost burden to taxpayers is more. So if all of our projects are 30-year bonds at 4%, just add 70% to the cost of everything. So I don't necessarily think that that's healthy. That's several $1 million worth of interest that we're talking about on the project.
Matt, do you want to speak to
Well,
that?
well, what's up on the screen right now is $6.9 million at 3.25, and the term was 15 years. So first, the highest year was 676. Yeah, 676, which is what's a million on the tax rate, Finley? You should know this. Is it still 10 cents or
50,000 is a penny.
50,000's a penny? Okay,
So 500,000 cents.
So someone needs to
10
figure
cents,
that out.
13 cents.
13 cents. Okay,
I think.
so
I
that's
don't want to give bad information here.
that's less than 13.
He's
That's
nervous.
no. You're right. You're right. What I was thinking. You know, so millions around 13 cents. You know.
15 years at 3.25%. You know, that's pretty good, especially right now, Anthony.
That was
And-
that was last year.
And in terms of a school district, I mean, that's kind of typical.
We also, I don't know when this bond will be going out, but we had a revised revenue conversation the other night at our meeting because they're anticipating the Fed rate, or was that what you would call it?
Yeah, the Fed,
is
yeah.
Gonna be dropping. a
Prime
bit.
rate.
Paul actually gave a number. I don't remember what it was though.
It'd be a June sale
Yeah, this,
if June of 2025.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could probably be tweaking down, which would be helpful, but,
Yeah.
um,
So, you know, we had proposed 15 years, you know, because it's 6.9. When we did the middle school, it's 15,000,006. I think that was a 25-year bond. We've never done a 30, but we could spread it out for a 30, but you're going to pay more interest on it.
well,
But you're going to lessen the amount of the tax impact per year. You know, it all depends.
right, I think, again, are we gonna be speaking about length of bond as a committee here, or is that the school
No,
board?
that's a school. That's a school board
You
thing.
have a motion
because-
on the floor.
because
Yeah,
that-
no, I was just about to call it. I just wanted
Well,
to.
I just think that those are decisions the school board would make in helping to, deal with the tax rate, whether it's 15 or 10 or whatever. That's what we would do. Just so we know. what
Yep.
kind of
But what is relevant is that you're talking like 2 cents on the tax rate, the difference between these two plans. That's like,
Nothing.
it's about what you're talking about.
I know.
But
And that's
just-
why we publish the tax information on the website. I hope people read it. I hope people look at it and realize that what the actual cost is for what we're building here.
That, just to be clear, so that schedule that was just up there, the
Yep.
6.9 million for 15 years at 3.25% interest. I believe it's a little hard to do compound interest, but I believe that's $1.79 million worth of interest. That's my point. So like, we
It's a
can have
typical loan.
another
We're-
conversation on that, but like, if you have a few $1,000,000 for a building, like paying for it.
Did you
more
pay cash
quickly,
for your house?
half of it?
Okay, so you financed the rest, though, right?
got
That's
rid
what
of it
everybody
as
does.
quickly as possible.
It's, well, yeah, I'm with you there, and that might not be a good
And-
decision in all markets, especially
it-
when there's a 3%, you know, it doesn't matter. That's not our purview. Okay, we have a motion on the table?
I got one quick comment.
Oh, yeah,
So,
keep going.
one of the things we ran up against when we first started looking, again, this has been a long time ago, is everyone remembers the two buildings, that, oh, we can get by. The amount of laws and actual requirements for a school have changed from, 10 years ago to now, to what they're gonna be in 10 years from now. We're gonna short-circuit ourselves again if we try to do something half-ass. I mean, the laws are not getting less, the requirements are not getting less. I mean, you can't be a teacher today without having a master's degree. I mean, you've got kids, you've got teachers in the elementary school that have to have master's degrees to get, it's ridiculous. But until we stop that, and we're not gonna stop that here, we don't have any choice but to house these people and get them into a facility that can operate in. So it's just gone on too long, to me.
Yep. Caitlin, I forgot to, you mentioned a point last. The other issue we had that was the big feedback was that the information wasn't given out. It wasn't clear, nobody knew what was going on, and the information that was given out on like Facebook and all this other stuff was just bad. It was wrong, and I'm convinced that it wasn't the voters with the dollar figure. I don't think the $1 million is going to matter. I think that when we give them the real tax impact and we build the building that the administration needs and the school board recommends, I'm convinced that they're going to realize it's a value. Any other discussion before we call the vote? All right, all those in favor?
I'm voting in favor so people know.
Are you in
but I-
favor or against, Finley?
Can they
In
vote?
favor.
Okay,
Put
sorry.
your hand up.
I had it up.
Well, then you put it down.
All those against? Just so that she can, I want to make sure she can count. All right, motion passes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 0. Okay, now we got the,
Still records your vote though, right?
No, it's not necessary. By individual, you mean?
I don't know if
could,
she
but-
put it in, you know what, I'll put it there and she can figure out what to do with it.
so Paul and Matt and Bill, what's our next step now? We vetted this out, we know it's the right decision, we voted as a committee that it's the right decision. How do we move forward?
Well, first of all, I think we need to get an up-to-date cost estimate.
Yep.
Of what this will be, take a look at what the interest rate is, length of a bond, is it 15, 20 years? Present that to the school board, but, to someone's point, I think what really hurt this project last year was that last-minute shift in price, where people at the deliberative session was saying, what's going on here?
We didn't even know, we were on the
Yeah,
committee.
yeah, and so I think we need to get as careful an estimate as possible in terms of what is the actual cost of this, and what does it look like financing it over either a 15 or 20-year period.
And at this point, obviously you guys are the pros here. We talked about and this is not our purview, but just so that everybody understands, construction manager, different ways of doing it. We need to find a way to get multiple bids, obviously. Are we at that point now? Is that,
I don't know.
I'm asking for as much as everybody else for
Yeah,
myself.
yeah. Right now, you're probably at the point where you want to go back to the two contractors who gave us estimates last year and do the same thing with the plan you want. And we'll drill down a little bit into the quality of the systems and the contingencies and the safety factors and kind of tease that out between the two, because last year, one estimate was quite a bit higher than the other because they were just making different assumptions. So we can get into a little more detail with that with the two different contractors. If they agree on the price, great. If they don't, then we can figure out why, and you can then decide.
And that might be
What you
something that
value.
we'd want to review those options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Because we know there are going to be some contractors that are just fishing,
Oh, yeah. Just to give another update, there's still no large high-rises planned for Boston. So all those contractors that are normally working down there's going to be a lot of contractors looking for work the next couple of years. This is perfect timing. And to your point, we put this out to bid. I think this is good timing. I'm not saying we're going to get a big discount by any means.
So the process typically goes that you'll put something for vote in March, right? And then if it gets approved, Then you design the project, which takes 6 months to design it, get the permits and all that. But you don't want to bid the project that would put you into the fall, right? You don't really want to bid the project in the fall because it's too far before, you don't want to start construction in the middle of the winter.
Right.
Just makes no sense. So you want to start construction in the spring, and bidding the project, say like this time of year, to start construction in the spring is too far out. Contractors, there's too much uncertainty in that long of a time frame. So typically the best time to bid a project is January, February, something like that. That's when contractors are lining up their work for the next summer. So the typical schedule for any school project is project is approved in March, you design it over the summer, early fall, get contractor interest throughout the fall, and then put it out to bid in January. Whether that's construction management or a straight competitive bid, it doesn't really matter. It's the same timeline. You'll get a price then in January, February. You'll sign somebody up soon after that, and then they'll start planning the construction to start in April, for instance. So they have a few months to start getting ready and mobilize and all that. And then this project would probably take about a year to build, something like that. So it would start in, say, April and be done about the next April, roughly. So that's kind of the way most school projects play out, just based on the votes happening in March.
Yeah, this was the timeline that we wanted to do when we built the middle school. But you remember they wanted it now, because at that point in time, the current middle school, which is J. Muse, was 30% over capacity. And we were at a point where we were going to lose our adequacy money, because Nick Donahue, who was the Commissioner of Education, came to the school board and said to them, you need to fix this right now, because you run the risk of having kids going to an unapproved school because your school is 33% over capacity. There were 400 more kids in there than should have been. And I think you were probably one of them back in the day, right? And so
Like
there
always.
was
We both were.
1,400 kids in that school. So that was way over. So yeah, I think it'd be nice to have Paul do a timeline, right?
Yep.
We can do the pricing, do the timeline, show, when the bids are gonna go out, when it's gonna be done, because people are gonna have the expectation that if it passes in April, we're gonna build it in the 6 weeks we got to play with over the summertime, and it's gonna be done. It's not gonna be that way. It's gonna take a couple of
gonna-
years to get this done.
Assuming we get more than 3 minutes to I'm going to break some of that down in deliberative session,
Yep.
just so we can continue with the full
We
information piece.
we should get more than 3 minutes. We need the time to do the presentation properly.
If we
this
get 3
year.
minutes, each of us is going to take 3
Yes.
minutes. Not Anthony. No, I'm just kidding. Just it was a joke.
So, yeah.
Bad joke, but it was a joke.
Yeah, if we could look at updated pricing and then have Paul do a timeline of what takes place when, that would set up expectations for everybody. And then once I get the money piece, I can talk to the bond bank and have them run debt schedules for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and bring multiple options to the table, as opposed to just 15 years and that's it. And those debt schedules, I'd flesh them out so you would see the exact amount of interest you're paying, principal, interest, total, payment, whatever. So,
Paul, go ahead.
So we talked about the contingencies and the inflation factors. That's one of the reasons you have to have a buffer, a contingency for inflation, because you're not approving this in March and bidding it in April. You'll be bidding it about 15 months from now, even if it gets approved in March. So who knows what inflation will be a year plus from now. So that's why you have to, is inflation going to be 2% or is it going to be 10%? It's been both of those things in the last 5 years. So
And we don't want to knock it
you
down
can
to
guess
6
it's gonna be
million and it comes in at
2%.
6.4.
you can guess it's going to be 2%.
Right.
And if you're wrong, you're not going to have the money. You can guess it's going to be 10%. You'll be almost certainly safe. We usually guess somewhere in the middle, 5%, which is a safety factor, but not like a ridiculous one and not a tiny one. It's like the average of the last 20 years has been like 4 or 5% construction inflation. So if, 5% on 7 million, that's 350,000 of contingency just for inflation.
Yep.
So that's why you get those variations in the estimates, because this contractor might assume 2% inflation. This one might assume 10% inflation. One is just being safer than the other. So, but you do get that range because it's being bid more than a year from now.
Are there any other things that, points you want, I mean, you've spent 2 meetings with us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. Is there anything else that you wanted to review while you got the floor here?
I mean, you've already decided on the plan, but it's not just the number of people in that plan that's the difference. It's you have a full-size conference room, secondary conference room in that plan. The other one had a tiny little room. In this plan,
Well, we're good on this plan now. We voted.
No, I know. I'm just
The old plan's
explaining
out.
why this
Yeah.
plan makes more sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you are missing in the other plan that you don't really notice. A lot of things were squeezed that would affect their functionality. Storage is a lot less storage in the other plan. Just so when people ask, there's a lot less storage. There were fewer toilets. There was less workroom space. There were smaller conference rooms. Just everything is squeezed down. People are in interior rooms, no windows. There are a lot of little things that are much better in this plan. So
The only reason this whole plan exists is because of the one individual. It's
Yeah.
amazing how much got done with that one request,
Yeah.
which was great.
Yeah.
And I'm no issue. It is what it is. But this was the design all along. This is what the school board needs. This is what
Yeah.
we're building to.
yeah, when it comes to getting information to the public,
Yeah.
having a really strong effort to do that is important.
Yep.
So when people are trying to get a big school project approved, there'll be a lot of informational flyers that go out, actual physical piece of paper, because people don't look at
Yep.
emails, and so actual paper that goes out to every house, ideally. Just any way you can get the information out there, like you were saying, what is the actual tax impact, and consistency. Saying, okay, this is the plan. If it fails, we're going to try it again next year. We're going to try it again. We're going to be consistent, because last year there was that
Yeah.
flip-flopping. So I think, really think about that, how to get the word out clearly, more than you think you have to, just because not everybody pays attention to any one source of information. So we've seen school districts trying to get a project approved where they have a whole committee of 20 people that their whole job is to get information out. And they'll go to Walmart and stand in front of Walmart with a board and talk to people. They'll go, to every group in town. It takes a lot of legwork to get the information out, because people aren't always focused on things like this. So just, that infrastructure that you can put together to do that is important. Just standing up at the deliberative session and giving a speech,
I'm with you.
There's a lot that has to happen besides that to get the information out there.
Yep.
So that's what we see. Successful projects usually have it's almost like an army of people out there. Really
Lori's
trying
got
to-
an army waiting.
Yeah, really trying to get the word out. What you're trying to do.
The board discussed at the last meeting, the ad hoc committee, so we will open up again and ask for anybody who would like to be on that committee, and then, have you guys meet that committee and work together, because those people should be people that are willing to, also do presentations, every PTA, every PTO, every booster club, everybody should know what's going on, and that's gonna be what you were saying, the networking. The work that we have to do is gonna be a lot, and, this committee would have to volunteer that work, because it's a little bit in a different direction than saying yes, but if you're on board with the project, helping to get the word out.
May I just say also, we need a good, accurate exterior representation of it also, because how many times last year did we hear, they want to build a Taj Mahal? Well, this is close. This is not exactly, the floor plan as presented here, but that's not a Taj Mahal. And I think most people, if we talk it through with them, will understand that, this is kind of a big house.
It looks
Yeah.
pretty basic.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
pretty
you
basic.
see up on the screen, I just flashed that. There's Bill walking to his car, in the
Yeah.
evening, right?
I've dropped about 30
At
pounds.
7:45.
Yeah, you're looking good, Bill. Yeah, and this is it's pretty. There's nothing fancy about this. I mean, it kind of looks like the courthouse a little bit, or kind of looks like a more modern version of the town hall. I mean, town hall on the west wing, I think, is probably 8,000 square feet. I don't know what the east wing is, but it's it's considerable. So this is of similar size.
So in the past too, when we were trying to come together with a plan, there were many people on this committee, former people on this committee, that visited other superintendent offices throughout. There's 88 school districts in the state, I think 88, and so to go and see even small little districts and what they have for a central office or an SAU office, and to discuss, like when we talk about the conference room, like someone said last year on the forum, something about, well, the Nashua conference room is small. Well, I worked in Nashua. It wasn't efficient. That was the problem. If you ask anybody in that central office, they would have said, it needs to be a little bigger, because it was used 24/7, but it wasn't big enough. So going to Gage's point, we need to do it right the first time. And if people went out and saw what other towns had, I think they would have an appreciation that this is a need. It's a critical need.
And, we're a pretty small committee. I'm good with volunteering my time as I do to do this. But I would think all these people would want to, maybe volunteer and help out as well, because that, we all want to work to one mission. So if there's any, the Shaw's visits or whatever, I mean, we're going to need a team of people just giving information. This isn't selling, it's just informing.
Right,
This
not
doesn't, we
selling,
don't need
just
salesmen
informing,
here,
and
we
that's
just
to
need people
Caitlin's
giving
point,
information.
Like we did our best last year, but these meetings were not televised, so we did all this work, but no one really knew what we were doing, right? So it's hard to get the word out. Now at least we're televised, people can see it. If they want to know what's going on, they can watch the television.
So next steps, I think we got was up-to-date cost information. We got bond information that we'll get. Yep, the exterior rendition, I think, is a good point, just to get that out in the open. And then the outreach. You took my bullet point, Paul. I thought I was good about bringing that up. But the social media piece, I think, is big. I don't have social media. I'm not on any of it. So I don't know if there's somebody that could champion that. And again, this isn't sales. This is just informing people. We need someone to be on there to say, guys, here's the real information. And when there's a chain that, goes and talks about some weird stuff, guys, that's incorrect. This is the information. I think that's huge.
So we talked about this at the school board too, because we were fighting misinformation all last year, and we didn't want to go out and use the Merrimack Forum as a place where we're going to do our communication. But it would be nice to say, this is where you can get the correct information. Like, so when there's misinformation out there, or like I said before, Chris Christensen did a wonderful job. He was on the ad hoc committee. He came out and he was correcting information all the time. He's, been in this town. He was a state rep for a very long time. He's highly regarded, and he did his homework. So like having someone that is willing to do that. But I don't think if we don't want this community think the Merrimack Forum is a place for us to do our business. But to be able to say, that's incorrect information, please go to the website, or please go here.
I wish I even understood the politics of social media. I'm not on it, so I don't even understand where you can post and where you can't, but I believe you.
Yeah. Well, there was just information like your taxes are gonna go up $1,000
Oh,
a
I know.
year, or
Well,
$2,000 a year, and so just countering that was just too hard.
I did. That was where it got crazy. So those are the next steps. Anything else before we move forward to approval of minutes?
One quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know some of the other things that got talked about, gosh, it seems like forever ago now, but things like, oh my, I just blanked on the term. It's like the long-term plan for the districts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like
Capital
stuff like
improvement
that. Are we gonna start taking a look at that stuff too this year?
We're working on it right now.
Excellent.
I've got Jason, our tech person, doing the technology infrastructure piece. Tom Tussaud's looking at maintenance, looking at roofs. We're also looking at paving. I want to talk to you guys about paving O'Gara Drive and putting that sidewalk in that we've been talking about for a decade. O'Gara Drive is like shell-shocked right now. If you drive over it, it needs to be redone. So, yeah, we're putting that together, and that's going to be something that you're going to be looking at.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. All right. Approval of prior minutes. What, I don't. Is there?
Somebody has to make a motion.
To approve.
I'll make a motion to, sorry. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes that amended.
Do we have a second?
I can stop it like he did. Didn't work for me.
He's got to do that.
I second it. You really were aggressive.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes as provided? It's It's unanimous.
Unanimous. 5-0.
Next meeting dates. Oh, Pat wanted me to ask how many meetings we expect to have throughout this process. I don't have any idea. I guess whatever's needed was in my mind. I was figuring we start another month out. If that, I don't. Feel free to jump in. I don't.
7 days notice, right, for a meeting?
No, 24, but
24 hours.
So you could call a meeting,
Yeah,
but,
okay.
Yeah, if we
Yeah,
need
if
to do
we-
something,
if
we
we
do
need- if we
something.
need-
But
if-
you
if
stick
we-
with the
yeah, we
monthly
can-
meeting schedule.
Get out the calendars.
We can get a real schedule, and then if we need extra, we can.
So Pat put November 6th. I'm good with that. Oh, no good.
Wife's birthday.
All right.
You're not good.
The next one would be November 13th. I'm good with that also.
That works for me.
Rothaus family? You guys going to like Zimbabwe or some good spot, or
Another
you
wedding.
guys always got good
We
vacations?
just had a big wedding, we're
always
not
fun
going
stuff.
anywhere for a while.
what'd you say, 13?
13th.
It seems to, on mine, it's,
All right. Next meeting will be November 13th. And do we have
Here,
any?
7 o'clock?
Here, same thing, 7 o'clock.
Hopefully here. She has to see who's available and nobody else is here.
Got it. Yeah. You'll confirm with us.
Yeah,
Hoping for the best.
yeah.
No worries. Do we have a motion?
To adjourn.
Yeah. Unless you get something else you want to talk about.
I can make a motion, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Do we have to vote on that? What do we?
Yeah, all those in
All
favor?
those in favor?
Even if you want.
Unanimous.
Okay, there we go.
Motion adjourned. Yeah. Motion approved to adjourn. Meeting called to order at 8:06. Or what do they call that? Called out of order? We're leaving.
adjourned.
Adjourned at 8:06. I'm real technical with the terms. I studied.